Name is Tom Peisl. I'm professor for corporate strategy at Munich University. And I've been involved in not only the automotive industry because of my engagement in Method Park. That's why I got to know Richard, by the way, about almost 20 years ago, which seems like yesterday. What do we do in strategy? We've had some very good and interesting topics and projects with certainly BMW, but also tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers in the area. Among others, around the topic of innovation and the discussion, or maybe finish off talking about myself. I joined academia about 20 years ago. I had industry experience with Siemens in telecommunications and GE Capital in mergers and acquisitions around the globe, but then decided that life in the academic environment might be more fun. And after 20 years, yes, it still is more fun. During that time, we founded Method Park as I would like to say the leading supplier for stages, project management, process management tools, but also engineering and consulting. And I'm still on the board of directors in that company. Parallel, I started about 7 companies in various areas from consulting down to project management company and some nice innovative software organizations. Despite that, I'm still not rich. That's why I'm still in academia and still love to teach. When Richard approached me with the topic on innovation agent and what kind of personalities do we need, the first aspect that I thought is necessary is a reference model, like to have a joint common understanding of what we're actually talking about. Before we get started talking about innovation agent or the need to rethink the human perspective in innovation management, we need to have a clear common understanding of what in fact we're talking about. And this reference model is based on research by not only Jaspro, but Clayton Christensen, and in particular, Gary Pisano from Harvard Business School. And he introduced the model I'll introduce in a couple of seconds in a 2015 journal article called You Need an Innovation Strategy. In the last 3 years, we used that model, developed it further, and introduced it at quite a number of tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers in the automotive industry, showing them where deficits are and where innovation actually needs to happen. And in this context of our conference, we're going to propose that we move from an industry perspective to a human perspective. Now, on the x-axis, we call it the technological dimension. And the technological dimension is kind of, existing technologies and new technologies as a continuum. So when we look at the, let's say, automotive industry as a start, okay, we have existing technologies, and existing technologies is everything about certainly traditional engines, but also batteries, and whatever is near and dear to the current state of the art in automotive engineering, because that is all technology that exists today. And for any company involved in the area, when we talk about mobility, the big question is, what is new technology? Okay. And fuel cell, for example, is usually used as a good example for new technology. But we argue that fuel cell is in fact already existing as a technology, right? So that dimension is still uncovered from the automotive perspective. You know, what's next? Because we all know that buying a hybrid or a battery-driven vehicle doesn't really help to reduce our CO2 because of the cost of manufacturing, right? But the second dimension up here is leading towards, is the question on what business design actually will follow the new innovations that will come up in here. What I mean by business design, it's in fact the way markets are changing from the way we sold cars today to new ways of how mobility will be structured. Okay, and what is meant by that? Traditionally, car manufacturers, OEMs, sold their cars, right? And then they improved and they went a little bit up that path in offering leasing options, financing options. They set up, BMW banks or VW banks and so on. But still, the whole concept is about we build cars and we sell cars. And the question now is, what will be the new business design? And that will be reflected in, any kind of external trends. For example, that spaces to park a car will be ever more expensive. So we're heading towards a shared economy principle. And, companies like Sixt, rental-car companies, are already introducing new ways of how business will be done in the future. But that has a tremendous impact for car manufacturers. Because when we look at the circular economy, which is also a driver, reduce, reuse, recycle, and so on, we need a different concept on how cars are built in order to offer that flexibility. And Gary Pisano called that quadrant routine innovation, because we always need to be a bit better in what we know. That is radical innovation, new technologies, radically changing the world. That quadrant is called disruptive innovation, because new business designs disrupt existing incumbents. And that area is called architectural innovation, the most difficult part, where you include new technologies and new value designs. And what we found in our research is incumbent companies are very good in that area, okay, in routine segment. And they're okay in understanding and moving into new technologies. Whereas that is the first culture change for people and a new requirement for an innovation agent. Moving up there is usually, when we look at traditional industries, almost impossible to capture. And we see that, Amazon and bookstores and several other industries where incumbents did not manage to get into a new way of thinking how value is created and distributed in an economy. Now that is usually a graphic where, new innovation projects are kind of clustered at, respective companies. And most people in our workshops still feel comfortable assessing that situation. But then we start with the second graphic, and we say now we move from the automotive to the IT industry, right? And we use the same dimensions. Where do we think new technologies will change the way IT will be structured in the future? Because mobility will definitely combine both aspects, if not more. right? So we do the same assessment. We look at IT companies today, the Googles and Apples, right? Where are existing technologies they use and what is new? And the Internet of Things or cloud-based business is definitely nothing new anymore. It's already in here. IoT. I like writing on that board. Okay, hope you can read it, but at least you can listen to it. But again, IT companies, the Googles and Apples, always thrive into new business models, right? I mean, that's what they all started with, right? But what they initially triggered off was an architectural revolution, you know, the iPhone, the Facebooks, the Google Maps, and so on. But there is a factor that over time, you know, now it's existing. So the question is, what will be in that gap? And we ask automotive managers on their assessment of the IT industry, which is kind of interesting. And then we bring in external people to tell from the IT industry and tell them what they think, what Google's innovation landscape looks like. And then, in addition, and that's what we propose at the conference, right? We move into the human aspect, right? Like, what kind of capabilities and competencies do we need? And we have the technological competence, and we have the social or business design competence, right? What different aspects do we need? And when we talk about, you know, the results from the Drives survey, a big data analyst, well, that's a job description that exists, right? And it serves existing markets. Why? Data is usually historical, right? You can run a couple of simulations, but then you cannot predict anything social. Why? Well, in social systems, humans still do not behave as they should in any mathematical model, right? So the question is, what competencies do we need to come up with, you know, not even thinking in outside the box, but thinking in new boxes. Like what areas emotionally and technologically do we need? What profiles do we need? And, you know, we learned because of Corona that bioengineering is an incredible factor for new innovations. So what kind of new roles, what kind of new competence profiles do we need? In particular, now back to square one, in the automotive industry, not only to understand where that comes from or where ideas for that area come in, but also what do other industries need to compete in the future and survive that trend towards new business models and a new social understanding. And listening to BMW's publications or statements the day before yesterday about, you know, the new circular design, new ways of building, manufacturing cars, but also, you know, the move away from we sell cars to the risk of owning cars. And that requires a very different understanding on the whole concept of how a car is in fact engineered and built, because it will be more modular and there will be architectural changes not only from the consumers or market side, but also from the technological elements. And that would conclude my very brief presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very, let's say, motivating. Um, one question maybe.
Sure.
I see that you actually create more dimensions. That's interesting, yeah, because I agree with you, and it's really good to see that every area has its own innovation, and we have to also look at what things are coming and we cannot fully predict even what is coming because that might depend on the innovation of other dimensions. Yeah, and this makes this really interesting. Yeah, so
Richard, one of the
I
questions is there a cause-effect relationship? Do we need new human profiles to spur that, or will technology shape it? But technology will be driven by humans, right? So
yeah
what is first, what is second, and what capabilities do I need within a given organization?
yeah
Move away from a generic framework where you say like, okay, technology and social, right?
yeah
Possibilities, but what do we do with all these technologies? To what human factors are important. And I think that correlation, that cause effect is still unexplored. And your thought about, question how an innovation agent should be, role modeled. I think that's brilliant.
yeah. Because I agree with you, it's a cycle. Because actually, when we talk about new innovation here, it's humans that have a new idea, and that inherently leads to new technology, new development, and new skills needs, and then it returns back again to humans having a new idea.
Mhm.
And this, I agree with you, this kind of human-centered empowerment of innovative minds is really missing. Yeah, we became a production society, and we don't empower these young, innovative minds enough. Yeah, so it's a really good thought. Yeah, so I would fully agree to that. Yeah, my whole life I had the same experience. That if you have a good idea, it's not easy to get through it. Yeah, because you get resistance by 90% before you get listened to. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
yeah,
Because we know one thing for sure, that any change and any move up there is change. We'll have 50% resistance and 50% supporters if we believe in good old Gauss, right?
yeah,
The bell-shaped curve. But we can trigger the X bar in telling people what needs to be done. And just an outlook for the conference. One of my doctor candidates will actually look at competence profiles and assess whether the trend towards a more specialized degree program, like big data media design analyst, right?
mm,
Does that really help, or does that embed people in that quadrant,
yeah,
right? So, do we need to go back and say like, we need a creativity and a holistic understanding of things in order to explore these three quadrants,
yeah.
right? Because if we specify something today, it will not work tomorrow because there will be changes, right?
Yeah.
And the more specialized we become, maybe the more we lack the adaptability to changes.
Hmm.
So, but that will be one of the papers. And the second paper will be, in fact, telling the story of one of the OEMs where we did 4-month project on assessing where do they see their current project portfolio, innovation project portfolio.
Hmm.
How is it assessed by inside people, and
Hmm.
how's it assessed by an outside expert from a different industry.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then she will explain a bit about her role as innovation agent, on how she moved outside her comfort zone, talking about psychology and so on, and the need to extend her knowledge base in order to cope with, these potential questions out there.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that very much. Yeah. It is, you know that in the past, when we developed the first innovation idea, I think we met when you developed your innovation assessment model, and I had my innovation manager
Mhm,
training developed years ago, 15 years ago or
mhm,
more. And we called it innovation manager. And I think over the years I realized it's wrong because we cannot place this kind of responsibility in the hands of one person, but it was implemented like this, yeah? That you have a central division, one innovation manager, an innovation database, and you validate the ideas. But I agree with you that the innovation agent idea is different because we cannot place it on one person. We have to place it as a capability among all persons, yeah? And maybe in each area. And there could be an innovation agent empowering people to think creatively in each of these areas. Yeah? And then maybe even, like you say, connect the dimensions. But it's definitely not the manager anymore. It's distributed into agents that are built into the teams.
Absolutely. Can I do one final graphic just for a second?
Yeah,
Just to
sure.
tell
Yeah.
you what a potential outcome to that question might look like, and a very brief justification for it. Okay. What we see is, in fact, from a starting point, we see two different trends. Okay. This is starting point 0. We see two trends, and the one is towards effectiveness and efficiency. Right? This is all the project that we do to make processes and products more effective, more efficient, right? And there is 100% when we reach that gap. But a company that is 100% effective and efficient lacks resilience. Okay? These are the business models that we thrive for, right? Reduce costs and be more effective and reduce anything that might be considered waste, and in particular, reduce failures. Natural systems, okay? And everybody who has a hay fever knows more about it. Resilience. In spring, you have 10,000 seamen and everything floating around, and maybe one or two will actually be a new plant. So natural systems show a certain resilience, right? And what we need to understand is no economic system can be fully 100% resilient, but we need to create a competence for innovation agents to have a box like this, to understand concepts on how to drive efficiency and effectiveness. And that is the routine quadrant. And we need the competence to drive resilience, accept failure, test, and follow an experimental design in business. And both aspects are relevant for innovation agents, right? Because once you move outside the routine quadrant into disruptive, architectural, or radical, whether it's technology or social, right? You need to build in resilience. Why? We do not know everything about the future. We will never know, because we know one thing for sure: the future will be different from today, right? So the innovation agent or the agent team box will need to include both dimensions, the toolbox on effectiveness, efficiency, and follow a stage gate model on innovation, despite the fact that we know that not a lot of projects come out of a stage gate model, except in the routine quadrant, right? But we need to have that toolbox, and that's more social because it builds on resilience issues. And how that is structured, or how that is, 80-20 or good old Pareto or different, right? That depends on the objectives and goals of the respective innovation organization. But that is the innovation management box or agent box that I was trying to allude to.
Mm-hmm. That is really good.
Make sense?
It makes for me complete sense because this was what was worrying me about the innovation manager, which I was the project lead of this project innovation manager in 2003 to 2005. where we made in Europe this innovation manager education. And I think, Bruno, you still use that as well in your teachings at the FH Burgenland. But I think this kind of openness of a more agent-driven approach of one company having many agents that understand this holistic idea of openness to change, but also at the same time can connect technology with even sometimes a risk to try out something new. This experimental philosophy back into the company more than in the past, that is, I think, the role what we need now. I agree.
I'm happy to contribute. I'm very happy that my, let's say the conceptual model that we use and that we intend makes sense from your point of view, and I'm happy to contribute.